So maybe it's just because it's like not that politically important. If you ever consider that erudite. Like there may be young men just aren't that big of a voting bloc. Well, only lefties do cancel culture. It wasn't even really true then, but whatever. But you cannot argue that in current day. I'm sorry. Nothing is going to bait me into defending Dean Withers, okay? People like Dean Withers cannot be your young man outreach figures. If what you're saying is factually true, but you got it from ChatGPT, why does that even matter? So, ChatGPT. This guy is like extra mentally disabled, isn't he? Right, so we have a new erudite debate. So erudite has been on Tim Pool to talk about... Can we guess the topic, guys? Can we guess erudite's topic for Tim Pool? Can we take a wild guess? Absolutely insane guess here. Anyone? Ape? Not ape. She's not talking about ape. She's talking about young men. Let's go. Young men. Young men drifting right. Let's go. Let's go. The most important topic facing the world right now. Some young men in the last election sliding right. Famous, important voting bloc. 18 to 25-year-old males. Oh my god. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with caring about young men, okay? But erudite does it in a very silly way. Very condescending way, a very silly way. She's not very appealing to young men, let's be serious. And she doesn't really understand them. So, let's just pull up. There has been some wacky stuff happening with erudite that we'll get into just before we play this debate. So, I tweeted, or quote tweeted, sick earlier, saying, send her to CCOT. This should be illegal, send her to CCOT. Now, if you weren't here for the last piece of NSE content, you may be wondering, what do I think she should be sent to CCOT for? Well, it'll be clear in this clip, hopefully.
But it is true that Democrats have bled support on the working class. You can look at some of those exit polls. But I think that, unfortunately, a lot of people say, oh, look at what Biden did. Hello, Hutch. Hello,
Hey,
welcome. Look at what Biden did. Biden was like a super pro-worker candidate.
So what can you see there, guys, on the computer?
Yeah, but I mean...
Do we recognize this? Do we know what this is?
Did and like the actual
Do we see this?
They had, right? A lot of them, from the infrastructure plan to the IRA, very, very delayed in impact, right? They're good things.
We see this, yeah? Thank you for the membership, Sanctus. Thank you.
His NLRB board.
So in the middle of her, sort of like, she was on a podcast with Pisco, Josiah, Econoboy, and they were sort of having back and forth, and she starts just looking stuff up on ChatGPT. And she's coping about this badly. So, the cope may even be worse than the crime, to be honest. The crime's pretty bad. I'm super against ChatGPT in debates. Especially if you're using it for more than just, like, getting a stat. Right? If you're using it to break down an issue for you or give you talking points, something that's totally illegal. You should actually be jailed for that. Truly, truly despicable stuff. This, though, is probably worse than the crime. So, oh, wait, it's not this one. It's not this one, I mean. But she does say something stupid here. Wait, why does everyone think searching for things in the midst of a discussion is some dunk? Yeah, I use ChatGPT like a search engine, as it does a great job now of providing specific sources. Except she had the GPT thing up for like the whole debate, or whatever. What? Not that big of a deal, not that big of a deal. Where's this other tweet? Where's this other tweet? Here it is. Hot in. Streamer searches for things. The clip you used wasn't a debate. They were talking about a current event and case, and I understand ChatGPT to find the case law they were discussing. Well, I understand ChatGPT to find the case. Okay, whatever. But keep telling everyone you don't just really hate women. You're trying to appeal to young men here, trying to be the young man whisperer, saying the reason you're shitting on my views in ChatGPT is just because you hate women. You're just a disgusting misogynist. Okay, erudite. Okay, okay. I'm sure this will work. This is very awesome messaging. Very, very awesome messaging. Thank you, Scoobs, for the tier 2 membership. Hugely appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. So very smart optics stuff here. Now let's go to the Tim Pool debate. So this is today. That was last night. This is today. In Tim Pool's studio to talk about why men are leaving the left. Society's attack on masculinity. Okay, let's take a look.
Right. I do streaming and stuff. I typically talk about gender, so it's a good topic for me.
Oh, gender.
And kind of like socio-cultural commentary.
All right, sir, who are you?
Gender
I'm
and
American Nacho.
socio-cultural
Christian, conservative,
commentary.
husband, father.
Awesome.
I work full time supporting my beautiful.
He's an American
stay-at-home
Nacho
wife
guy
and
as
our
well.
2
Oh my
recent
God.
additions. And I stream video games and politics is more of like a hobby. You could say like a mover and shaker in some of the political communities.
So,
Tangential to like Andrew Wilson or something like that.
right on. To start, I think we're in agreement that young men are moving to the right.
I think if you're denying that, you're just denying data.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vox, at Washington Post, like everybody's bringing it up. I think the question is why, but you agree young men are going rightward. So I guess is there a disagreement on why it's happening, or do we actually agree why it's happening? I mean, what's your view on why young men are basically moving over?
I think as a liberal, I'll be very clear, I am liberal. And I spent the last several months being asked this question by liberals and Democrats. I think the answer is that the left kind of hates and fears masculinity broadly. I think it doesn't like it. And I think you can see that in the fact, I don't know if you know this, the APA, it's the American Psychiatric Association. This year they came out with rules and guides about how to treat men in therapy differently than women, and like tricks and stuff that they need to be aware of, right? And it's like, it shouldn't be like 2025 where we're coming out with this stuff. I think the left has just broadly neglected the male issue because it's been what's the word? Not politically correct to talk about.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And
So
what
maybe
say
it's
you,
just
sir?
because it's
You
like
agree with
not
that?
that politically important. Have you ever considered that, Erudite? Like maybe young men just aren't that big of a voting bloc. They just don't dedicate a lot of time, money, or energy to it.
To some degree, yeah. I think men are moving to the right because men are more rational than women. You know,
Like even right now,
young
like,
men are shifting away because left-wing ideologies are kind of disconnected.
So it's not like it's just right wingers, just left wingers that do this shit. I saw this from Dick Marston earlier. It's a Fox News clip.
It's a major problem. And, you know, Speaker Johnson has been talking about those maybe deadbeat folks that are on Medicaid, and maybe some of those folks are the stay-at-home sons. We don't know. But I'll tell you this, leave it to Gen Z to rebrand laziness and social awkwardness as something cutesy, like a stay-at-home son. They did much the same thing with quiet quitting, where you can go to work and do less. And if you call it quiet quitting, it's somehow better. But Laura, I got to tell you, this is also a big problem when it comes to, I think, declining birth rates, people not getting married and having children. You know, that's a big problem. They blame it on women. Well, look at what young women have to choose from. The pickings are slim. Yes, we might have a feminism problem in America, but it's the feminization of men. There are a lot of young women out there that want to get married. They want to have kids. They want to have stable families. But there are a lot of young men out there who want to live in mama's basement and order DoorDash.
Yeah, where are the women that want families, for real?
Oh
On God. Like, that's not a thing,
major problem. And you know,
this is so ignorant. Gen Z men get henpecked for 12 years by the most obnoxious and dumbest generation of women in history, and then get dumped into a labor market alongside robots and Somalians. And now some die job TV bitch is calling them lazy. Get fucked. I think this is basically the attitude. I think this is basically the outlook. I think Dick does a good job of summarizing it, though. That is basically it. That is how people feel. 100%. You can argue about the truth of it, like, oh, the data. But no, that's how people feel. Is they're sick of fucking, what is it? You know, the fucking TikTok, I mean. With the girls in the office. Fuck, dude, I can't remember it, man. When they're doing the fucking stupid song. The Longhouse dance. The HR Longhouse dance. The Longhouse ritual they do. Gen Z Mini, that's the shit. That's it. It's like a lifetime of that. And then you go into the workforce and it's all fucking Somalians. It's like, am I gonna have to deal with it? I have to look at these women? Like doing this while getting paid twice as much as me? I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna go postal. That's how it feels. That is how it feels. It's absolutely... You may hate it, but that's how it feels. Thank you for the $5, Jim Lee.
Squidward with the caveman forehead is just right. Sack up and go out there and force your love onto women.
Okay, that... Thank you for the $5. I disavow that, though.
They feel kind of disconnected from reality. You know, we're living in a society where, you know, we're having economic stresses, we're having, you know, geopolitical stresses, and men are seeking, you know, pragmatic solutions to
Not even getting henpecked by women. You don't even talk to them.
economic and social changes, valuing like free expression and preferring like empowerment over this like collective guilt that seems to be like following us around like a cloud. So
Indeed. What would you say to that before I jump in? He said
Men are more rational than women.
Yeah, and liberal ideologies are, how did you describe it? Not rational or not?
yeah, it seems like
CPCA, I have given you attention for today, okay? You need to... No more for today. All right, man. Come back tomorrow.
seems like young men are experiencing sort of like a disconnect from like left-wing political narratives. Like it's not like they don't make sense to especially young men and even older men like myself, like starting a family. I'm looking at what world my young men are going to have to grow up in, what world my children are going to have to grow up in.
Yeah, when I look at young men and young women especially, I think most people are not very rational. I don't really give rational points to most people or most voters in general. I think women are like influenced a lot, whether they like it or not, by things like hormones, right? I think women's like hormonal fluctuation is daily, men's are like monthly. But at the same time, you know, you'll point to like women like crying maybe over something that they shouldn't cry about, or being soft and maybe enabling in an area that they shouldn't be. But then you'll see men like punching holes in walls and like doing crime. And so this argument that like men are just more rational than women, it's like, well, no, like different emotional systems and different arguments appeal to each of these groups because each of these groups are fundamentally self-interested. And I think
I can't do any conversation like this. Any conversation like this where it's like, you know, do women think more with their feelings or more with their brain? It's like, okay, get me out. I can't do this.
on the left is to make any appeal to anything for young men. The left hasn't offered young men anything. There's nothing that would be appealing to a young man when you look at left policy, but there's lots of things that are appealing to young women.
Yeah,
so I think
co-worker
Democrats
slop
want to talk to young
conversation
men. They have to
for
talk to
real.
young men, but I don't think it falls simply down to like rational versus irrational. I think that's like a flattening of the nuance.
I think that modern liberal orthodoxy is antithetical to masculinity, and that the men who remain on the liberal side are largely what we call, and I quote, this is a biological term, sneaky fuckers. Are you familiar with that term?
Yep.
Are you familiar with sneaky fucker?
Lay it out for me.
So in biology, there are some species, there's an example of one fish where there are two different types of males, large and small. The large male earns favor with the females by being strong and powerful.
Oh, yeah.
The sneaky fucker goes in the middle of the night and inseminates the eggs and flees.
Yeah.
And so largely I see what you were saying. And my view is, obviously not absolute, there's a lot of men who actually are into leftism.
Dude, this is nightmare. This is actually nightmarish. Erudite talking about young men's issues. American Nacho and Tim Pool talking about dating dynamics. Isn't there a clip of this guy like... Where's the clip of Tim Pool talking about dating, his troubles dating? There's like a clip of him talking about dating where he's like, oh yeah, women don't like me and that's their fault or some shit. It's like crazy. Dude, I can't see it.
Liberal ideology, I'm just saying, I think it's a generality, that an ideology that the orthodoxy focuses on oppressors, who has the power, is going to be antithetical to a man who is seeking to empower himself and become strong. And then what you end up with is, among millennials, the data in 2018 was that 70% of millennial women were Democrat, 30% were conservative, and 55%...
Is it in the one of the Tim Ron Toast videos?
You know what?
Any surprise to anybody that the body positivity movement may be actually contributing to the obesity crisis? It's science.
There's another video where Tim critiques a study analysing Twitter posts following the release of Star Wars The Last Jedi.
Star Wars The Last Jedi Backlash. Academic study reveals 50% of online hate caused by Russian trolls or non-humans. Oh my god, Apparently, we're not allowed to be mad at movies for being bad anymore.
Contrary to the headline Tim is reading, the study states it found only 33 accounts which were sock puppets, of which only 16 were Russian. So add that to the figure of the 11 bot accounts that were found, and that's 13% of the negative tweets analysed in total that were Russian trolls or non-humans, not the 50% alleged in the IndieWire headline. The articles arrived at that 50% stat by combining the data for Russian troll and bot tweets with the far larger number of tweets that were deemed by the study to be politically motivated. So the article has done a sleight of hand here, which essentially amounts to misinformation. However, as Tim hasn't read that study, he has no way of rationally decoding this, and instead he decries the whole thing by implying it's all a Hollywood conspiracy to deflect criticism.
I'm not wrong. It's the fans who are wrong. Actually, it's not the fans who are wrong. They're all Russian trolls anyway, because Star Wars is so...
Again, West Media got it wrong. That would serve his some fake self. subsidized once by low back pulled accurately to whatever being
spouses, men,
of economic knowledges. Looking at the actual research with
Here we go.
becoming, incels.
Tim points to dating apps as the reason why there's a scarcity of economically attractive males. This is at odds with the article he's reading, which explains the problem as an economic one, not one tied to developing technologies. Looking at the actual research paper, it spells out that men are increasingly lower educated, lower paid, and women tend not to marry down in terms of those things. There's the whole problem, rationally and clearly explained. Whether the men are on dating apps or out in the wild, they're still not getting those college degrees or well-paid jobs. Nevertheless, Tim pushes on developing his dating app theory, asserting that dating apps are allowing younger women to find older men, and that's the real problem.
Someone who's 33, who has a career, owns his own house, you are now competing with that. On the dating app, women will see that. And guess what? A young woman is going to look to a guy who can be like, I can take you out to a fancy dinner, and we can go, we can do whatever we want. And the younger guy who...
Age gap between marriage in 2012
This isn't any of the clips I'm talking
Trojan
about.
horse to
did whatever else, swipe on him. So then she hits up me, or actually, in all reality...
There's literally a clip. There is a clip where he almost explicitly... This is none of this what I'm saying. Whoever said the Tim Ron Toaster needs to be fucking banned, okay? Thank you.
See that I'm about to be 34 and I have no family.
This is the one.
Because my dad had 2 kids by the time he was 27.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you know what the problem is, though? It's definitely not me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's everybody else.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one.
Millennial men were conservative and 45% were Democrat. The data probably changed, but I think you get a large portion of weaker males who find their path towards, I guess, sexual marketplace success in being the male feminist pandering to women, telling them what they want to hear.
Thank
so
you,
they're in favor.
Hody.
Whereas the other guys are defiant dude bros, chest bumping. And that's an exaggeration, but that's, you get the idea.
Yeah, I think there's something. So like the sneaky fucker is very fun. In Evo human psych, there's not like a ton of evidence for this. It's like a mating strategy. It's more like birds that do this. But this idea that I think is actually more true, that I think is more grounded on reality that we're talking about, is this idea that essentially for you to perform well as a man in the liberal space, there has to be a certain level of like castigation you have to do toward masculinity and like a promotion of femininity that's almost exclusively performative, right? Especially because as a woman, I wouldn't say liberals are like inherently better at like certain forms of sexism, right? Like there's a lot of times where I feel like just my existence, I just don't get respected as much like at a default, even in liberal spaces. And so what I think happens is there's a lot of performativity. And in the case of on the left,
What liberal spaces are you in where you have to cut your dick off before entering? Dude, seriously, where are you going? Where are you at? It's because you've been hanging out with CJ the X, isn't it?
we've had this issue where if you want to be left-coded, and by left-coded I mean perform, appear, and feel left. You've got the language, usually some aesthetic, right? I appear more left than I appear right. I've got like a choker on and whatnot. In all these ways, if you want to perform left, you have to do some level of service to femininity. And if you're going to talk about masculinity, you have to caveat and couch it within these other things. That's how I kind of view it, which if you're a young man, you're just like, what the fuck? Like, where am I?
Maybe that's a good way to put it. It's just easier to be on the right. You
Men?
don't really have to do a whole lot.
Yeah, and
You could sit around eating chicken wings as long as you're talking about football and you don't say weird leftist things. The right's going to be okay with you.
yeah, that's one thing that I was wanting to point out too, is that I think
You can be Asmongold. You can be the biggest right-wing political commentator online.
you know, they're moving right because at least the right is listening, or at the very least they're just like cool with it. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, you can just sit on the couch and hang out with the bros a little bit to a degree. When you're disagreeing with right wingers, they're not going to destroy your lives because you have a disagreement. So you're both maybe on the right. But,
okay,
you know, I'm probably a little more on the right. You're not going to be ostracized for this. On the left, you have like a large shift going extreme left, and these people are like tearing down even their own. I think that the Democrat Party and left currently is actually kind of fighting with itself a lot too.
Well, I define wokeness as
this is total cap. Total cap. There is no difference between. Like, I understand people want to go back to like they want to imagine we're still in 2015. Well, only lefties do cancel culture. It wasn't even really true then, but whatever. But you cannot argue that in current day. I'm sorry, you cannot argue that now. That's no. The purity fucking check-in and cancelling and shit is so active on the right wing. They're doxing the fuck out of each other all the time, being anti-Semitic and all this shit. They were $5, Fairy Queen.
The male feminist trope is tired. Even liberal guys now use male feminist as an insult. Nobody's trying to claim it anymore.
It's kind of true. I think they still exist. That guy still exists, but it's an MB now. It's a non-binary guy who paints his nails black. That's what it is now.
Like adherence to liberal social orthodoxy. And the reason for it is you get a lot of people on the right and they say that wokeness is critical race theory, critical gender theory, Marxist. Well, that's not correct. While that is a large component of liberal orthodoxy, support for Ukraine does not fall into that. People try to shoehorn in by saying, oh, but Ukraine is the weaker being oppressed by the Russians. And I'm like, that doesn't explain NATO expansionism. NATO expansionism is not Russia is small compared to NATO. NATO is encroaching on Russian space. There's a big debate over that. So the oppressor doesn't make sense there. Islam being the second biggest religion in the world and a strong theocratic, fundamentalist, militaristic religion also doesn't quite make sense. It is the adherence to the modern liberal orthodoxy, which is relatively amorphous. And so I pulled up just this real quick example. The 4 lights from Star Trek. Are you guys familiar with the 4 lights?
I'm not.
Star Trek The Next Generation, Captain Picard. Oh, everybody's on a Trekkie is groaning. Don't care. Captain Picard is captured by an enemy faction. he's brought into a torture room where the enemy commander has 4 lights above him, and he says, "How many lights do you see?"
What?
And Picard says 4, and then he gets electrocuted. And he says, "You are incorrect."
this shit.
Said, "Don't show up to Thanksgiving." Was it Jen Psaki who was like, "Don't go to Thanksgiving with your family if they support Trump" or something? Maybe it wasn't her, but this is MSNBC.
Sure, I imagine that there are.
We saw a wave of this after 2016 when he got elected the first time, which admittedly I wasn't paying as much attention then. And honestly, I followed a little bit more of your kind of line. I actually followed you a lot more in like 2018 because I was also like coming from the left around 2016, getting into politics when I started a family and stuff. You saw a wave of people getting, all this pushback saying, not to just what you're saying, not to talk to your family. All these videos, and then now again, you're seeing the same thing on TikTok. Waves of them after.
Well, who's that
I
one?
stopped talking to my family because
sure, but we don't use
they voted for X.
We have to be really cautious, right? So as somebody who's on the left, right, who is friends with lots of people on the left, grew up fundamentalist right, by the way. I don't cut off anyone in my life. I have lots of conservative family. I would never cut them off. I'm very close to my neighbor who is a dogged libertarian.
Yeah, but the exception doesn't make the rule.
No,
we're talking in general.
This is my argument, right? There are loud, squeaky wheels that we need to do on the left a better job of policing. It is better if the left goes, hold on, that's crazy. Okay, we don't agree with this. The left's problem is that we don't kick out our extreme left, not that the extreme left represents the broad group. The problem with the left, especially my side, is that we're kind of cowardly and soft and status quo. And so we don't speak up to our extreme fringe left, which is why like the far left progressives have so much more ability to speak, despite the fact that their like actual like functional policies are only like pretty weakly represented within the Democratic Party. The Biden-Obama party is the strong party within the Democrat Party.
So how do you define what left means? What does it mean to be on the left?
I mean, it's like spectrumal, right? But like essentially you're probably going to be pro-welfare state. You're probably going to be pro like trans, gay, LGBTQ. So you're going to be like economically and socially left by and large.
So but you use you use left in the definition. So pro-trans.
Sure. So yeah, when I use left in the definition because I think we know, but like when I say socially left, it's usually like you're chill with gay people getting married. You don't really care if trans people exist.
What does that mean? You don't care if trans people exist?
Like you're probably going to support them transitioning, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Economic left would be welfare state. You're going to be pro social safety net, and you're probably going to be pro regulation of the market. Right. These are typically what we view as left policies.
What about? I mean, there are people on the right that are trans themselves. Are pro.
Why, dude, it's like so retarded. She's doing like everything retarded. She's like so dumb and bad at appealing to people she wants to appeal to. If you believe trans people exist, dude, like why frame the argument like that? It's like so annoying to anyone that's not already bought in with you.
Pro adults being allowed to trans and do whatever they want. They're pro welfare state. They're moderate on abortion, but they're still called right.
Well, there's kind of 2 problems. One is that politics has devolved. I mean, I get called right by a lot of like further left people. I'm obviously not right. So if you want to have, the issue is I can talk to you about the far left and I can talk to you about the liberals and like the space that I'm a part of. And so whichever one you want me to like speak to, I can. In my group, I would say, I'm not sure. You're probably somewhere politically on the spectrum on like moderate, maybe shifting right. I don't know like all of your policies necessarily, but you'd probably be somewhere in the moderate like center space. But performatively, they're going to feel like you were demonstrably right-wing, particularly if your audience is demonstrably right-wing. The way that the far left would view that is that you're far right because they don't even think the Democrat Party is truly left, right?
So let's start here. Like we're talking about young men wanting to adhere to reality. They're tired of being told there are 5 lights when there are 4. And the trans issue is a really great example. It relates to the broader political correctness, but you can't get your average left liberal. I mean, both.
Okay, is this user called Baby Bandit a random user with just like a strange name, or is this Bandit Bandito, who was attempting to get unbanned recently?
Even a member of Congress to define woman.
Yeah.
If you're a young guy entering the political space and you see an interaction where a woman says to another woman in Congress, "What is a woman?" And well, I'm not a biologist. I can't answer that. You're a young guy going, "What the fuck?"
Sure.
It's Bandit Bandito. I'm shocked that this worked. Okay, I'll let you stay in chat for now, Bandit, okay?
Now, I think for young women, they're saying, I think women are motivated by social hierarchy and social order. Women are subject-oriented on average. Men are object-oriented on average. So that's why I think we get this divide. Young men say, that is insane. Whereas women say, you're speaking out against the group. Against the collective.
Well, and it's a bit of a joke too to say, men are more rational, but it is true that men are more pragmatic. They're more based in logic and reason, and women can operate a little more emotionally. And so I think they're in fear of hurting the feelings. Like even, I've had discussions with like close, female friends of mine, and we have, children, and we're discussing things like this, and they're also afraid of what their children are going to grow up in, what their children are going to be taught, because the leaders of society can't even define, what things are, based off of what you're saying.
Pure inconsistencies like 10-year-olds can't get tattoos but can get puberty blockers. Right. And so when you ask, like, what's the logic of telling children they can't permanently alter their bodies when they're minors? except in this one instance. Additionally, you said that one of the things about being left is you're going to be okay with transition and things like this. Then you have the question from young guys and from people in general. Why is this the one DS?
Fuck, dude. I need to fucking get a light or something for my fucking muted shit. Dude, it's so fucking annoying. I just said, yeah, I don't think any of this achieves anything. It is every stream. It is every stream. It's fucking annoying, man. I'm like, I just don't check. Anyway, what I would say is, I don't understand. Like, obviously none of this achieves anything politically from my perspective. But from Erudite's perspective, what do you achieve politically from going on Tim Pool and saying Democrats and lefties really suck, they hate men? What do you achieve from doing that? What's the goal here?
DSM-5 disorder that we affirm and the others we don't. And there's no answers for this.
Well, there's an answer. It's because transition seems to reduce suicidality by 60%.
False.
That's not false. This is like repeated on.
Define suicidality.
Suicidality is in attempts.
That's incorrect.
It's not incorrect. This is unquestionable.
Chase, what was the Supreme Court argument from the ACLU? Did you listen to that? The ACLU's lawyer said, in fact, it does not to the Supreme Court. And so what we look at is, here's where I'm at. Don't care about whatever the DSM mental disorder is, be anorexia, bulimia, pica, don't care. What's the treatment? We find that the existing scientific research says that desistance rates, not detransition, desistance, where a child who is trans entering puberty simply desists from being trans, is greater than chance. Some estimates between 65 to 90%. Suicidal ideation is around 37 to 40% among people who do transition. That would imply there is a greater possibility to reduce suicidal ideation by not intervening with medical treatment.
The other option is actually to affirm the birth-given gender.
I do eat very sparingly in the first half of stream. I'm not gonna like I'm very hungry by this point in the day usually. I'm quite hungry right now.
I tried to look up some studies for this, and I don't think there's ever been any studies done where they're specifically on people who have body dysmorphia or trans, ideology or whatever, and think they're another gender and are trying to transition, being given the testosterone if they're male and estrogen if they're female. But there are studies that have been done that are given to patients who have depression, and I'm pretty sure there's a handful of studies that were double-blind where they give them testosterone or estrogen and it decreases their depression rates.
Sure. So this is where I want to go back to this timeline conversation, right? I'm not here interested in defending the crazy left. Most of my career was spent fighting them, right? I fought most of these people most of my career because I believe that if the left wants to represent anything, they need to have a strong back. They need to believe in something and they need to kick out their extremists, right? And I think that the left failed to do that. The issue is that a lot of people are looking at the left and right and they're looking 2016 to now, and they're not looking at, say, 2016 to 1970.
Yeah, but you would consider yourself to be probably in support of that position, right?
Which position?
About gender-affirming care.
It depends on what you mean when you say gender
for children
care.
Specifically.
By and large, I'm pretty skeptical about the process by which we
you would
properly evaluate children.
Generally support it, though, right?
If it's managed better, right now I think it's too experimental. I think it's
right wing.
But you separate yourself from the left, the extreme left, and as a more of a lay person, sort of on the right. I mean, that's extreme left to me.
What I mean,
it's even considering.
I don't even think you've gotten to what I'm saying though. Right? Like the issue is that we can talk about the far left, and I'm probably just going to agree with you that there's a lot of crazies. The timeline conversation that we need to have is we need to remember what it was like from 1990 to 2016 when the right had a lot of strong cultural war. I remember growing up in a very conservative idea where evolution was viewed as evil and bad and anti-everything. When this is an anti-science perspective that was dominant on the right, and it feels like we've forgotten about this. I grew up in a school where parents were advocating to remove any mention of evolution, any mention of adaptions over time. They just wanted to basically cut out a large portion of biological science. And so while I agree that the left won the culture war in 2016, well, they canceled their opponents off of it mostly, and they did a lot of bad stuff. And they went too far. I would just agree with that. The issue is that I'm still fundamentally left because my principles and my policies fall left. And I believe in a party, whatever party it is, that stands up for those things that I value.
Which specific, so outside of the crazy left stuff, what particularly would you look for in a party?
Strong institutions, not.
What does that mean?
Strong institutions means institutions that are effective, that are power balanced, and are reactive with speed.
What does this mean, like the FBI or the Federal Reserve? What institutions do you mean?
Most of them. So most of the institutions that I think that we've erected are by and large pretty good. I think there's good reason for them, though I don't know all
the FBI.
Sure, but I don't know all of the history for it. I'm willing to basically grant that I'm not smarter than 200 years of American institutional development to just assume that I know better than the FBI necessarily, right?
No, I'm not trying to, it's not a gotcha. I mean, when you say the institutions, does it mean universities? Does it mean the post?
Universities, healthcare, the three branches of the government, the central banking, the
Central banking, wow.
Yeah, the NGO that exists to kind of like counterbalance and third-party check certain things. So when I talk about the institutions, I'm talking broadly about most of the institutions. The CDC,
but I think you recognize many of them grow corrupt over a long period of time, right?
Right. So this would be my counter. On the left, we say strong institutions, and the problem is that I think a lot of them have become rigid. And I don't know if you know much about metalsmithing, but there's this idea. But there's this idea when you're building swords, for example, you need to have a strong sword. It needs to be both flexible and strong. So if it's too hard and not flexible, it'll break. Right? And if it's too flexible but not hard enough, it'll bend. And so when I say strong institutions, I mean basically the properly crafted sword. It needs to be flexible enough to react to stuff, which I think proceduralism has killed their flexibility, but it needs to be strong enough to withstand people who might want to attack the Constitution, people who might want to be corrupt, which most people that enter politics are probably somewhat corrupt to some degree, right? It needs to be able to withstand these things with the assumption of what incentive structures do to human nature.
So who did you vote for in 2024?
I'm not American, so.
Oh, you're not American?
No.
Oh, you Canadian?
I got my food
All
now.
these Canadians
so
come to
I
our
have
country trying to influence our politics.
Yeah.
Foreign
True.
different okay, who'd you vote for in Canada, Trudeau?
I didn't vote in this last election because I haven't been in the country for like almost 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
before that was Aaron O'Toole, who's a conservative. Before that was NDP.
you voted for a conservative?
Yep, I vote all. In Canada, we don't have this like.
Yeah, you vote for a party, don't you?
Well, we have like 6, right? It's less culturally baked in that like if you're a conservative, you're always conservative, forever conservative. Like most people in Canada will vote like maybe NDP locally. At a provincial level, they might vote like Liberal, and then at a federal level, they might vote like something else, right? Like that's pretty standard in Canada.
So U.S.-wise, you would probably still find yourself aligned with the Democratic Party.
Yeah, theoretically, if I had been able to vote and I was American, I probably would have voted.
This is what I can't understand. I mean, by all means, criticize the Trump administration, whatever. I don't care. The Obama administration.
People saying that's just not true. Is that not true about Canada? And most people actually just committed to a party.
I'm not going to speak to anyone before when I like Bill Clinton. I can say very little about. I was a child, but I can say that Bush sucked and violated the Constitution. Obama sucked, violated the Constitution, and we can go into great detail how. And Joe Biden and his administration was probably the most egregious violation of constitutional norms and our institutions that I've ever seen in my life.
Sure, and then
It's just like so upset. He's such a fucking hack, man. Such a fucking hack. It's unbearable. I actually can't stand it. While you've got Trump in office, who's just like deporting people with no due process against court orders. It's just like so retarded. I literally can't deal with it, man.
Now we have like 2024 Trump, who I would argue is like also violating the Constitution, like pretty openly. And so I guess my question to you would be, I don't really want to participate in any of this. First of all, if I was an American, I'd be voting in my midterms and my primaries and my locals, right? Not just my federal, which most people don't even do. Most people that complain about their politics don't even vote at their primaries, which is how you get the nuance in your own party. If you're mad, like that's what I say to leftists, if you're mad that the Democrats don't represent you, vote in your primaries. If you're not voting in your primaries, you'll never get represented at a federal level. Like, what are you even talking about?
There's a word for this when someone believes in voting to change things. The left uses. I forgot what it was.
Probably a stupid liberal.
It's like it's like votarian or like it's some word like that, voterist or something. A person who believes that voting will change a system.
I believe in democracy, right? And I think democracy is the best system we've arrived at thus far. Not because I think democracy is a fundamental good or capitalism. I think that they are two systems that we have created that take incentive structures that almost make people always do bad shit.
Wait, really? He's doing meetings with Netanyahu on how to help Israel's media perception. Really?
Power, money, greed, and it has, with those incentive structures, made the best country with the most human rights and the most flourishing in all of human history.
But we aren't a democracy.
We are a democracy.
The United States is a constitutional republic with democratically elected representatives.
Do you know why the founders said a constitutional republic?
Yeah, that's so fucking wretched, man. This guy was in Occupy Wall Street, right? His whole thing was being a fucking libertarian. And now he's sucking Netanyahu's dick. It's so crazy.
Well, democracy wasn't a term that was invented yet.
Liberal democracy is like a semantic term historically to represent countries that function with some kind of electoral.
So is a constitutional republic, because if you look back at the constitutional republic and what they describe, it later became what we know now as a liberal democracy. The reason that the founding fathers, like Hamilton and Madison, who are the people writing on this in the like original letters, the reason that they explicitly talk about not using the word democracy is because when they think of democracy, they thought of the Greeks, and they're like, well, we don't want some like crazy like just vote by population democracy. We don't like that thing. We want something that is more like essentially what we have now, which is a liberal democracy.
Republicanism.
Yeah.
Various jurisdictions who send an elected representative to go and represent the interests of the area.
Sure. The issue is that like we just do have a democracy. Like we're fundamentally, if in every way we're functioning as a democracy, we're acting as a democracy, we're voting, then like at some point we have to call the duck a duck. Like it feels like
Congress does not enact policy based on the will of the people. That's a fact. It's usually the will of the wealthy and the elite. which is what the
So
founding
that's
fathers
a fact. That's a fact, is it, Tim Pool?
intended, which is why the 17th Amendment got ratified in the early 1900s, because the original idea of how senators were sent to Congress at the federal level was that your state reps would choose to represent the state. So you would vote for a state rep who would then, in their own council, say, we want our state senator to be that guy over there, and no one had a say in it. So in the early 1900s, they were like, hey, the problem is they're sending cronies, so we're going to change this. And I don't actually agree. I think they did it because it allowed the subversion of state.
Just say shit that is just wrong and stupid, but really confidently. And you too can have 1.42 million subscribers.
Choice, the state authority. But the general idea among the founding fathers was that we needed, quote, better men to decide for the public, not a democracy.
Right. This is why you have the electoral college in the first place. This is why I tell people vote in your primaries. But this is a democracy, right? Just because you vote for an elected and then that elected gets to make decisions on your behalf. This is still fundamentally, in every way, democracy, right? The function of a democracy is that the will of the people transfer their authority and their power to an elect who then speaks for them. And we can talk about whether or not the people who speak for them do a good enough job. You and I would probably agree a lot because I'm very critical of it.
Do you think in the past 100 years, the U.S. government has actually enacted policies at the will of the American people?
By and large, yes.
I think the data shows us that the answer is no, they don't. There was the plutonomy article from Citibank 14 years ago, where Citibank drafted this internal paper to be shared with a bunch of financial interests saying the United States is not a democracy, it is a plutonomy where the wealthy control the political class and the political class enacts the interests of the wealthy elite. I think that's actually fascinating because I would assume the left position is largely that, yeah, politicians don't represent our interests. They represent the lobbyists, the corporations.
It's because you were mixing me up with like far left people.
I'm not mixing you up. I'm saying it's interesting that you would assert that when the left liberal, Occupy Wall Street, the moderate, largely view corporations as unduly influencing our political system.
I think most people would agree, though. Like, the issue is that this is my issue.
Harley Quinn, I don't know if you're trolling, but not a single message in the last 30 minutes has been funny. So if you keep just spamming retarded messages, I will just time you out. It's like, I'm giving you grace right now because I think you're like trying to be funny and like failing. But yeah, if it just keeps being unfunny, I'll just remove you.
Issue with leftists too. Just because there is corruption, it doesn't mean that the like that democracy isn't occurring necessarily. We can definitely say corruption is happening and there's something needs to be done about it. But essentially, my question would be, what's the alternative? Do you want America not to be a democracy?
Well, I guess the issue is how you define the phrase democracy, right?
Do you want to take away people's right to vote?
Again, all people everywhere all the time. Do we want to put certain restrictions on voting? Do we want to open up voting to
I'm asking you. I genuinely, I don't know your position.
Right. So when you say, do you want to take away people's right to vote? What's going to happen is there's going to be a semantic manipulation on the left where they say people means everyone. And then what you'll get on the right is something like they'll reference Starship Troopers, service guarantees citizenship.
Yeah,
right, where it's like when you allow people who are not citizens to vote, which some jurisdictions are doing, like in California, New York, they're trying, you are going to get a representation of non-citizens. And what are the non-citizens going to vote for? They're going to vote for their families back home. Why wouldn't they? I expect them to vote for their families, right?
Sure. And I would agree that there should be like some limits on who gets to vote, right? This is why I think citizenship is a really good standard by which who gets to vote, right? There's also even a good question like, should expats get to vote? If you haven't been in the country for 4 years, even though you're
given the
still a
warning.
citizen, what's your like...
You pay taxes.
You pay taxes, yeah. Americans do. Expat Americans do. Canadian, should I be voting as a Canadian if I haven't been in my country for like 20 years because we don't have to pay taxes to Canada? I don't know the answer to this, right? So I'm willing to grant that there should be limitations to who votes. My question to you is still, essentially, are you opposed to America being a democracy?
Again, it depends on what you mean by democracy.
A transfer of the people, of power, to an elected official who then does their will.
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you want that to look like?
Not like it looks now, to be completely honest.
That's fine, but what do you want it to look like?
Yeah, like a person goes for the people, has a conversation over what the representative bloc wants to see happen in their various political structures, be it at the state level, local, city, or otherwise.
Sure.
Those individuals go and then enact the will of their voter base and to the best interest they possibly could.
Without the pit stop at the NGOs and the lobbyists and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yep. And not having luxury steak dinners or being flown on private jets or going on boats and all that stuff.
Sure. Okay, so we should get money out of politics, like by and large. Okay, so I would totally agree with you. Like carry committees are the worst thing ever that happened. And the problem is that now we have a Molluck's game, right? This is the big issue with politics, is that when, and this is my biggest criticism.
This is just like, I feel like the money in politics thing is like a stupid, overblown issue. I think as long as the rules on spending and shit are like fair and enforced, I think it's not that big of a deal. No, they're not fair and enforced right now. I think making it all about, we need money out of politics, it's just like very retarded analysis. It's just like very... sort of low IQ, bemoaning the situation shit. Lobbying is an issue, but a lot of the people that use it for faux populist brownie points are retards. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it is. It's like, it's a very easy thing to gesture to as a populist and claim that there's something wrong happening without really having to explain what the issues are or how they play out or what the solution is.
Criticism of the carry committee is that essentially just to make sure everyone is aware of like what a carry committee.
Like, you're not gonna get all money out of politics. There's never gonna be no money in politics. That's not happening.
Is and stuff like that.
Not aware.
Okay, just want to make sure. And it's fine, you don't need to know esoteric words. It's not a gotcha. So a carry committee is essentially what we call like a super PAC. It's usually going to be a combination of, sometimes it'll be a nonprofit or a charity, a C4 and a C3, and sometimes there'll be some other little fun things thrown in there, but that's essentially what it is. And it essentially, this combination of things allows infinite donations, some of them, most of them, which can be hidden into who does it because they would be a C3, right? Which means that they're bipartisan, and then they usually are not bipartisan. And this is true on both sides.
Would you? Well, first of all, I'm not in America, so I have a huge investment there. However, I just haven't looked into that enough. I wouldn't know. I don't know whether having public or privately funded. Like the $10 Spencer. I spoke about it a lot, but you should look into dynamic in Australia. Gen Z men broke like 65% towards Labour. What's managed to avoid or win culture war shit far better than UK Labour? Okay, yeah, you said about that talk yesterday. Maybe we'll look at that at some point.
Sides, just so it's clear. Both sides are doing this. So carry committees get introduced. And the problem now is that if you...
How do you feel about the House of Lords? Not like a huge fan, but there's some parts where I like having an appointed chamber that's primary, but it should be all that experts and like, you know, shit like that. It shouldn't be this gay, you know, you're a really cool, important person, so we're giving you a lordship. No, it should be like, you're a really smart person who makes good decisions. We're going to appoint you a lordship, and you just, yeah, the hereditary part sucks, yeah. I think didn't they get rid of hereditary lords or some shit? Yeah. Yeah, they're trying to get rid of the remaining hereditary peers.
If you want to run for federal office, ever, good luck without a carry committee. You must participate in the evil thing that you despise, because if you don't, you will be limited in how much money you can raise. And the reality is that money does make elections work, which is gross, but how are you going to get your ads out? How are you going to pay for your
I wouldn't say I'm a full technocrat. I would say I have a slight technocrat leaning to me. That's why I like the House of Lords. Because it's like, it doesn't totally fuck the democracy. It's not totally, but there's like, you know, there's some people there that hopefully know what they're doing. Yeah. Regardless of what the public's saying, hopefully know what they're doing.
tour. How are you going to pay for your staffers? How are you going to pay for your flyers? Right? So money has to be infused to some degree in a democracy.
There's no way not to do it.
Exactly. And so then this issue goes, okay, well, if everyone, even if they want to play the game, even if we've got Jesus, okay, Jesus comes down and he's going to become a politician, which I would argue he would never do, but say he does.
I'd vote for him.
Jesus, me too. I would vote.
Yeah, me too.
I would vote the fuck for Jesus. Okay. The question is, Jesus also will have to have a carry committee. This is the Moloch's game, where essentially once the bad thing is in play, if you don't participate, you don't get to play at all. And so now we have this issue where we already have a bad thing, in this case, just the carry committee, and both sides have to participate. And the issue is now there's no incentive to get rid of it because nobody's going to canvass and like promote themselves on saying I'm anti-carry committee, because if they do, they will get no funding.
So, isn't this kind of part of the problem though? Like if we're trying to figure out why men are leaving the left, you know, we're not able to have a conversation like this with most people on the left, to be honest. You know, the people that, and currently there's no evidence that shows that the Democratic Party is interested in having people like that represent them. The people that they're supporting, the Parkers, the Harry Sissons, the Deans, all that stuff. And then this just recently, they put up that lady Olivia Giuliani or whatever that was going around on X. There's no evidence that they're even willing to concede on any of their positions.
Let me tell you, so we did a live event for the show, and we're planning a series of live shows. That was our pilot. We're trying to figure out how it works. I can tweet, who wants to come and debate on the culture war? And on the right, you'll get 500,000 responses. I'll get a text from Charlie Kirk saying, I'd love to find some dates that work. On the left, they say, contact my agent, and we'll give you our rates. Then if a few people, I'll give credit to the Krasensteins, as much as, you know, there's contention between our opinions.
They're fun to make fun of.
That's so cap. Come on.
Absolutely. But I respect that they've come on the show. They've said, let us know when you have dates. We'd love to be a part of the conversation. And I very few people want to do these things. And so that makes it impossible. I think the reason why is the fear that if you defy the orthodoxy, you'll be excommunicated.
Yep, they're right. Dean is fully audience captured. I mean, his friend Harry Sisson
canceled on us.
It's crazy.
I'm sure he did, right?
Yeah, he got scared.
They all do though. That's what I was gonna bring up too in regard to all of them. It's like I think a big problem too is that this new TikTok culture, like you're saying, has them audience captured, and what is the audience on TikTok? TikTok is largely designed for women.
It's got to be left leaning.
It's a lot of female users, more than like any other app.
Well, here's the thing, right? Dean Withers,
feminism, I do
they're
well.
bringing Dean Withers up as like the failure to appeal to young men, right?
And not so good.
So yeah, so I mean, so these platforms are shaping
TikTok
these
bans.
young influencers, and then they're terrified to go anywhere without their mute button.
Sure, but there's like TikTok is out. TikTok is out.
Nothing is going to bait me into defending Dean Withers, okay? I'm just glad everyone is on my page. The page, the drum I've been banging this whole time. People like Dean Withers cannot be your young man outreach figures. Ain't happening. I did see the BB gun thing.
So hell of a problem to get into, right? So you got to talk about like China and all these other like blah 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 blah. This goes back to my timeline, right? Which is essentially for me to say, do I think the left fucked up by letting the progressives win the culture war? Yes, I think they did, because I don't think the progressives actually represent most people. And now, unfortunately, they've convinced a bunch of young, stupid kids that they do. And so a bunch of kids put like a black box in their Instagram to pretend that they care about black people, but they still find like the unk biking down the highway with like loud music annoying and stuff like that, right? Like in all ways, there's this performance that I think has ransacked the left in a way that I think is repugnant. The issue is that the real question is, why be left? And the reason that I'm left is because when I go all the way back and I look at the systems that I believe in, I fundamentally keep falling left. I just fundamentally do. And so then the only question is, I guess I have to fight for what I believe in.
This bitch racist as hell. This white bitch racist as hell. Damn, this white bitch racist. Damn, this white bitch racist as hell.
Within the group, right?
My opinion is that the most logical, rational place for you to be would be voting for Donald Trump, and you're choosing not to, and you're just coming up with reasons why it can sound like you're still part of that tribe.
Nope, because I don't believe in what I think Trump advocates for. Like, I fundamentally think that Trump doesn't reflect my values.
So you have in the Trump coalition RFK Jr., which is a predominantly left health worldview that was dominant for decades. That is, people criticize him on vaccine stuff, but he's been pro-vaccine the whole time, even recommending the MMR vaccine. And no artificial food dyes. The health craze was a left culture war my whole life until these past several years. The right started picking up these things because the left had abandoned it and started siding with weird corporate interests on foodstuffs.
Yeah, partisan hacks are bad.
Tulsi Gabbard is anti-military industrial complex, anti-interventionist, and anti-regime change, which has been a position of the left my whole life. And so I look at Donald Trump and he says, we want a border barrier. That was Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders' position even up to 2016. And so looking at what Donald Trump is offering, he's moderate on abortion to the chagrin of conservatives. He's got left coded anti-war, which is not left anymore. I don't know. Now they're pro-war, I guess, pro-war with Ukraine. Donald Trump may be moderate right-leaning on a lot of issues, and he's built a moderate left-leaning coalition that satisfies a lot of my liberal policy views. So it makes literally no sense, in my opinion, then, for someone to be like, to defend the Constitution, we're going to support the Democrats. And I'm like, yeah, they arrested Trump's lawyers. That's unconstitutional. That's like an egregious violation of institutions and norms in this country. And they did it in numerous states. They falsely accused Trump of several crimes. They violated statute of limitations. Now you've got Letitia James falsely accusing Trump of mortgage fraud for paperwork he didn't even handle.
No, I don't know any of these talking points. I can't think about these in real time, and neither can Erudite. It's very fucking annoying.
As the divide between left and right, once again, going back to why young men are leaving. On this, what I was saying to Bill Maher. You are left or right, not based on your policy views. You are left or right based on what you believe to be true. And Bill agreed, despite the fact that we believe different things. So, for instance, he said, yeah, Trump wasn't a Russian agent, but he was certainly working with the Russians, and he lied. And when I brought up the Ukraine scandal, he didn't know about it. He did not know that in 2017, Politico reported at the same time as they were accusing Trump of colluding with Russia, Ukraine and the Democrats were literally colluding to assist Hillary Clinton to win, and it backfired. And it caused problems.
I know that's the point. Yeah, I know. Rob Noor does this shit as well, and there's all these fucking, like, conservative guys will just like start rattle off like 5 different injustices that happened to Trump, and you'll look into them and none of them are true. It's like they're always misportrayed. There's always something else happening, and it's like it's just the most annoying fucking thing to unpick in the world.
We had Hunter Avallone on Timcast IRL. And when I pointed out that Joe Biden said, quote, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting $1 billion, he immediately smirked and said it never happened. And I played the video for him.
It's like every conservative has their own like list of 5 things. So you have to like memorize a different set of grievances for every conservative commentator, because they've always got their own personal grievances about what happened to Trump in his last presidency.
So what I typically run into is liberals tend not to know what's going on in the world, and probably the reason why they're scared to do shows is because they default to, I didn't know that. And so we've even offered up certain friendly liberal person, I'll leave their name out of it because I'm not going to try and drag them, who dirtbag leftist types. They're anti-woke, but they're leftist politically. They cancel us all the time because they know they're going to sit down and they're going to end up sounding like Alex Jones. I'm going to pull up an article from the New York Times that says a Ukraine court ruled that they illegally interfered in the U.S. election to aid the Democrats. And they're going to have to reconcile with that and say, yes, that happened. But then when they go back to their Democrat circles, they're going to say, how dare you make that claim?
Well, I was actually like a Yang Gang kind of guy leading up to the 2020 election. And something that turned me back towards Trump was, just like you're saying, I started seeing all these articles. A couple of them I think you covered on your show. Remember the one about there's a video of Trump.
Dude, I'm looking this up. So I looked up, I literally, one grievance we're looking up. And the only article I can find is from The Hill in 2019. Like, what is this, man? Ukraine Democrats election interference. Yeah, I'm trying to see what the Ukrainian court ruled and shit. Like, I just want to see what this actual point is. So, wait, okay, Republican heads of state of 2 Senate committees asked the FBI and Department of Justice for records related to reported collusion between Ukraine and US Democrats to get dirt on Trump in the campaign from Ukraine in 2016. It's part of Ukraine's alleged role being easier to piece together than the Russian interference against public reporting and use some of the time involved. Additional facts available through federal lobbying disclosures filed under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. If what you're saying is factually true, but you got it from ChatGPT, why does that even matter? So, ChatGPT. This guy is like extra mentally disabled, isn't he? So it matters because it's like a total fraud hack move. You look like a loser for doing it.
There may or may not be a video of Trump in an elevator.
I love that one, dude.
It's like the most bizarre headline I've ever heard. It's a great one. Then another one was, of course, the one you just went over with Adam Conover. That clip was going everywhere.
Look at this.
There were great people on both sides.
Come on. Huffington Post. A tape might exist of Trump doing something in an elevator. Though exactly where that somewhere is and what that something might be, no one in media can say. That's because no one in media seems to have seen the tape or is even confident it exists. Yo, Huffington Post literally wrote an article about Trump may or may not have done something that may have been recorded. We don't know if it was recorded. We don't know what it is.
Yep. And then another my top 3. Those are my 3 favorite ones. That one.
Answer my question.
There were good
What's
people on both
question?
sides, and then the Trump puts ketchup on his steak.
Right.
And that one hit home.
Would you ever go on Timcast if they asked you? I'm like super prangy about visiting the US. But I don't want to get fucking detained or some shit because I've said crazy stuff about Trump or whatever. I make lots of anti-Semitic jokes. I don't know. You're saying that's too paranoid, but like people have been fucking detained for loads of shit. I just wouldn't want to have. I like hate the idea of like having to fucking, deal with like getting fucking hassled at the airport. I'm sure I wouldn't be fucking C-cotted, obviously. No, because some French scientist got detained and turned back for talking shit about Trump. And it was just on her phone or some shit. Yeah, some Australian woman just got detained as well. Some random Australian woman.
For me, because I grew up like dirt poor. There's 8 kids in my family.
Let's try this one.
I put ketchup on my steak because we were eating cheap steak.
I'm actually going to make the bet you'll get it right. Did Donald Trump call white supremacists fine people?
I don't think so.
What did he say?
I can't remember. I just my assumption is that it's clip-baited because most things about Trump are.
Joe Biden launched his 2020 campaign claiming that Donald Trump called white supremacists.
I hate that Tim does this. I hate that this is the gayest shit in the world. Just this. I'm going to bring up some Trump drama from 5 years ago where people weren't unfair or where people were unfair or misrepresented something he said. Answer for this now. Answer for this. Shut up.
And the video.
What was the actual content? I don't know.
During Charlottesville, Trump said, I've seen the videos and there were very fine people on both sides. And I am not talking about the white nationalists and neo-Nazis because they should be condemned totally.
Gotcha.
And the entirety of the Democrat-aligned media apparatus cut off the back half of the quote and showed Trump saying, very fine people on both sides, clip, and then showing white nationalists marching with tiki torches.
Gotcha.
And that was how Joe Biden launched his campaign. And this is why I say, I consider myself to be like moderately pro-choice. So where Democrats were with safe, legal, and rare, I think abortion is wrong. I think it is a bad thing. But I also don't know how you get to a governmental system where a woman has to get a court writ to be able to have any kind of medical procedure. The end result, of course, is this. I don't want to. You always got to rehash the abortion debate because people don't understand the nuance. But you end up with a system where it's like And we go to the doctor and they're like, heavens me, you're having an emergency, insert something. We have to terminate the baby to save your life, like unrelated to pregnancy. And it's like, okay, let's try and get a speedy writ from a judge to confirm this.
Sure. So,
But the medical abortions has never really been a problem, though.
So my point
I
is,
understand.
the end result is that you get people.
TSA detains Kuihman. Do you know this man? Pushes a picture of Asylum Piker. You've made public statements here as your best friend and that you have long calls at night. Can we take a look at your call logs?
Using the system. So this is the challenge in trying to find a compromise. But without rehashing the abortion debate, my point is, the left's position is abortion up to 9 months for any reason, no matter what.
Well, if I could put a,
this is actually what I want to kind of discuss. So
I
I
would
think
say if we had more programs to help after, I'd be fine with that too.
But look at Colorado.
Not to rehash.
Colorado removed all restriction on abortion up to 9 months.
right, which is what Canada has as well, right?
Which is insane.
Is
well,
it
the issue
true
that
you
in
were
Canada,
kicking
that
your
basically
feet
never
and
happens as a
giggling?
result of it, right?
Doesn't matter.
So
Like, why legalize murder and then be like, yeah, but people don't get murdered, so we're gonna legalize it. What?
probably because this fundamentally should be more of a congressional issue, right? Like the fact that Roe went through the judicial system in the first place is probably fundamentally part of the problem, right? And so
I disagree.
here's what I would maybe zoom out to. We're talking about.
Thank you, Sunday Prime, for the raid. Thank you, President Sunday. Welcome in, Sunday Raiders. Welcome in. We're watching some some awesome erudite content.
With that too.
But look at Colorado.
Not to rehash.
Colorado removed all restriction on abortion up to 9 months.
Right, which is what Canada has as well, right?
Which is insane.
Well, the issue is that in Canada, that basically never happens as a result of it, right?
Doesn't matter.
So
Like, why legalize murder and then be like, yeah, but people don't get murdered, so we're gonna legalize it. What?
probably because this fundamentally should be more of a congressional issue, right? Like the fact that Roe went through the judicial system in the first place is probably fundamentally part of the problem, right? And so
I disagree.
here's what I would maybe
Okay.
zoom out to. We're talking about partisan hacks, right?
Yeah, my understanding was that my understanding. I've never looked through the stuff. I'm not a fucking legal scholar. I don't know shit. Caveat. My understanding was that it basically got repealed because it shouldn't have been made. It was a decision that shouldn't have been made by the courts in the first place. It should have been in the hands of like Congress or the states or whatever. And that but the main argument against removing it was that there's like this principle in law that when something's been there for a long enough time, or like there's a legislation built on top of it or whatever, you shouldn't go back, right? There's some shit my understanding was that was the main argument against removing it, because it wasn't a decision that should have been made by the courts in the first place.
It's really annoying to talk to partisan hacks. As somebody who's left-leaning, but I'm not really a partisan hack because I don't have a buy-in on your guys' election. Fundamentally, I'm not voting, right? So I don't care about Biden or Kamala because they represent X party. And, you know, I'm sure you're familiar. The left wouldn't even acknowledge that, like, Biden was kind of weird because he would, like, had a bunch of clips, like, kind of like sniffing kids.
Sniffing little girls.
Yeah, it's weird. It's fucking weird. It's super, super weird. The issue is that on the right, I'm now hearing people unironically saying, I don't care about the Constitution. And if Donald Trump wants to get rid of the Constitution, that's fine with me. And it's like, all of this is crazy town.
Yeah, but that's not Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro or who else do we have? Steven Crowder or,
Sure, we have different things like, for example, getting really mad at like certain violent jokes from the other side, but then celebrating the same types of violent jokes on your side. I think both sides.
But what he's saying is like the mainstream pundits are the ones pushing for the crazy ideology
about the
on the
mainstream
left,
pundits.
and
So mainstream
Democrats
pundits are doing
and
these
party
types of
members
jokes.
too.
Right.
And that's why I asked you what I asked you earlier when I was like, well, how are you saying that you're like identifying moderate left, but some of the positions that you're holding, the majority of right wing would consider some of them extreme left, and then the rest of them are probably right.
Because when you put well, first of all, part of what I'm trying to say is we're not still talking to each other, right? Like I'm here and I'm defending far left positions. I don't hold any of these positions. There's lots of people around me that don't.
why
hold these.
don't defend them? I don't know.
Well, those are the only.
My
things.
point is that you're a conservative.
Yeah, I'm not a conservative.
You are.
I'm just not. I'm
see-
fundamentally not, right? I like Ezra Klein's abundance policies, right? I just
What is
like
that? What
this.
is that?
Ezra Klein?
His abundance. I know Ezra Klein, but
His abundance policies, for example, is very big on like basically removing a lot of proceduralism, figuring out like where the inefficiencies are, and making it the case that like blue states can build the things that they believe in, like green energy, high-speed rails, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
who disagrees?
Lots of people on the far left.
Steve Bannon wants to tax the rich. He thinks the billionaires should be taxed at 100%.
Sure, but then
Is he left wing?
I don't know much about Steve Bannon.
Well, he's considered like the architect of J6, a far right white nationalist, which he's not, by the way. My point is, left and right is not defined by your policies. It's defined by what you believe to be true.
I would say it's how you perform mostly. That's how you appear.
I think it has to
I
do,
guess,
yeah, I mean,
you know-
I would agree with him. I think it has to do with like the underlying culture of each side too. a little
That is
bit
how
as
you
well.
perform,
I
right?
mean,
The underlying culture. You code switch really well with men, and you say things that are like
Code switch.
Yeah, code switch, right? Like I'm sure that when
It's
you
left-coded language.
code switching,
Max, so true.
It doesn't say it.
code switching is, I'm pretty sure, from black culture. It's definitely not a left-coded thing.
Continue, but I'm gonna pull it up.
Code switching?
I love this article.
I'm a boomer. I don't even know what you're talking about.
They're like, okay, like this is like the most. I think I just fucking hate everyone involved in this. I think I just fucking hate this. Like, why would you get like, oh, it's like a black culture thing. That's not like a left code thing. Like, why do you even care? Why not just go like, okay. Like, I'm just describing the thing. Just say, like, why are you getting hung up on shit like that? It's so gay. Say you can say code switching. But then if they're like that, that's a lefty term. Just like, okay, why do you care? You know what I'm saying, right? You know what I'm describing? Why are you getting up on this? Well, it's not a lefty thing. That's a black thing. Can you cover the goblin attacks in Zimbabwe?
It's a black cultural thing.
Nope. I mean, maybe. Conservatives don't do this. White liberals present themselves as less competent in interactions with African Americans. The idea of like when Tim Walz was like, I can talk to white guys. Conservatives were like, huh? Because conservatives tend not to change their way they communicate for other groups of people.
Just like, just look into the order. If we like need to have this fight, which we don't even need to. Code switching comes from the black culture, which is talking about black people who are existing in like academic spaces who have to code switch from like the way that black people talk and interact and culturally exist amongst each other to being super white. This is what code switching comes from. It's not even relevant. That's just what code switching is. What I'm talking about here is that when you're thinking about left and right, it is reducing on like what policies are, and that's part of my problem. Is that left and right should be policies, and the fact that it's performance-based, which you might argue that started with the left. Maybe it did. I'm not fully sure, but say it did. Say it did start with the left.
It goes back and forth, actually.
I would agree with that. I think it's bad all around. I think it's harmful in every single way for people to look at me and go, she's got a choker and earpiece, so this is probably her worldview. It probably isn't. In fact, I think about my worldview. It's much more complex and nuanced. I think that we need to do that to each other. I need to go to Tim Pool and say, what do you believe? Because I know that you're not a stereotypical MAGA. I don't know what it is exactly.
It's right wing.
What?
What you just described, that ethos of let's talk. Let me put it this way. Carl Benjamin had a really great breakdown of my conversation with Adam Conover, and the clip that went massively viral, like Asmongold was talking about it, and he did a really funny bit, was I got exasperated after an hour and a half into the conversation where the dude was clearly not interested in truth. And, you know, with all due respect, like Adam Conover, I think he was great in terms of wanting to come on the show and with respect, but politically.
Does not represent us, just so it's very
Sure, but I mean,
but he probably represents the average. I mean, he probably
he's massive.
represents a typical lefty guy.
20 million views per video on left liberal content. He's got a new podcast. He's getting tons of views. He's doing tours. Granted, he got a little flack over that crypto thing. But anyway, the point is, I said the very fine people hoax, and he says, which is, and I said that Trump called Nazis fine people, and he goes, right. He said there's very fine people on both sides.
It's just like such a nonsense conversation, isn't it? I fucking hate conversations like this. It's like total nonsense. Like, what point are we building towards? What are we actually arguing over right now? It's just like scattergun fucking talking points. It's like bafflingly bad conversation.
And then I immediately said, and not the neo-Nazis.
I mean, it's every
nationalists,
conversation
they should be
I've
condemned
seen.
totally. To his response, he said that. And I was like, yes. And I pulled up Snopes that said Trump never called them this. And his response was, I don't know anything about it. Immediately got called out by everybody saying, wait, you just quit.
Yeah, it's just bouncing topic to topic with absolutely no direction, no structure. It's just, the three biggest co-workers unite to talk about nothing for hours. Dude.
Quoted it. You literally just referenced the very fine people on both sides, which is what he was accused of saying, without citing the remainder of the quote. So you do know what this thing is. Now you're claiming you don't. Carl Benjamin pointed out. He said the ethos of the liberal is adhering to the tribe, to the social order, and he says, and Tim Pool, once of that social order, prioritizes the truth, which is what actually happened. So Tim is desperately trying to say, and I'm quoting Carl, not speaking in third person. This is what actually happened. Whereas Adam is trying to maintain his adherence to social orthodoxy, which I refer to as wokeness. He does not value truth. He values what needs to be said to create social cohesion, whereas I value truth over social cohesion. It's actually, I think, a masculine-feminine coded thing, actually. Women
I think that's true. And there's a
dude, what? Oh my god, this is just like so embarrassing. I don't get it, man. 1.42 million subs. Okay, he doesn't actually get that many views anymore, I guess. But Jesus, man, like that's like so embarrassing to say. You sit there and you, like, from memory, quote how Sargon sucked you off in a video one time. And then you end it with, yeah, and Sargon thinks I'm, like, really masculine. Bro, you sound gay as fuck right now.
Question I'd like to pose, but I mean, do you think it's easier to change men's mind or women's mind?
Women's mind. There's like,
you think so?
Yes. The meme that women just become the political system of their boyfriend and husband is like a classic on every single side. Like, yes, it is. Women just shift towards typically the opinion of the like people around them by and large. This is just unquestionable.
Thank you for the $2, Spencer. Can you cover literally anything else? I beg you. We're going to get to 1 hour into this. We're going to get 10 minutes more, at least, okay? I'm going to make this into several segments, and I'm going to farm it endlessly on my second channel.
I would actually argue it's neutral, different. Men respond to different kinds of arguments, and women respond to different kinds of arguments. So understanding the expectations that women have on average that are different, you can exploit either into believing whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I just feel like intuitively, you know, I haven't dug deep into it, but it was something I was thinking about. And it was
yes, I have a second channel. It's called Kuihman, okay? Nega Kuihman. N-E-G-A Kuihman, okay? You get that, guys?
You know, it's a good segue into it. I just think intuitively, men are probably looking for, you know, more logic and more reason-based solutions or
Kuihman.
More. If you can prove it to me. Obviously, there's outliers and there's crazy people
like
who are going to stick with it to the end.
Like negative.
But so that doesn't necessarily confer a logical system. In fact, a lot of guys will be convinced to follow a guy because he's driving a flashy car. This is where you get fake it till you make it. A guy will. There was a guy that I knew who ran a business in California, and he made something like $60,000, $70,000 a year. He spent all of his money on, I can't remember what kind of car it was. He got like a Lotus or something, which is like 50 grand. It's not the craziest, but it looks crazy. And was broke, living in a bachelor apartment. But when he pulled up to business meetings in a Lotus, wearing a nice suit, they said, I want to be like him, not realizing he lived in squalor. He was putting on, and it worked. And he was able to sell his company and he made a lot of money. Fake it till you make it. That's Hollywood, baby.
It's performance, right? This is what I'm talking about, is that most people are moved on like vibes, right? That is the social media. It's true. It's the social media domain, which is unfortunate. The issue is that I'm very tired of hearing like right-leaning people being like, the vibe side is just the left. It's like, it's all of you. It's all of you all the way through. And it always has been. The biggest problem with the
Cover the Lotus's Eaters video on the Zimbabwe goblins. No one cares.
For $50?
Channel or PIM tool.
For $50? Say less. For $50?